The Obama administration is rejecting calls to grant clemency to NSA leaker Edward Snowden just days after Snowden asked for international help to lobby the United States to drop the charges against him. In a letter given to a German lawmaker last week, Snowden wrote, quote, "Speaking the truth is not a crime. I am confident that with the support of the international community, the government of the United States will abandon this harmful behavior," he wrote. On Sunday, White House senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer appeared on ABC This Week and was questioned by host George Stephanopoulos about Snowden's appeal.
Are there any conditions under which President Obama would consider clemency?
None that have been discussed.
None at all?
No.
It's not on the table?
Not that's been discussed. Mr. Snowden violated U.S. law, and our belief has always been that he should return to the United States and face justice.
That was White House senior advisor Dan Pfeiffer speaking on Sunday. Meanwhile, the New York Times published a front-page piece Sunday headlined "No Morsel Too Minuscule for All-Consuming NSA," revealing many new details about secret NSA programs and the agency's overseas surveillance capabilities based on documents leaked by Edward Snowden. New York Times journalist Scott Shane writes, quote, "From thousands of classified documents, the National Security Agency emerges as an electronic omnivore of staggering capabilities, eavesdropping and hacking its way around the world to strip governments and other targets of their secrets, all the while enforcing the utmost secrecy about its own operations." The New York Times piece reveals how the NSA intercepted the talking points of UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon ahead of a meeting with President Obama in April, and mounted a major eavesdropping effort focused on the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Bali in 2007. The documents also detail how the U.S. spied on Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and gained the ability to scan the stream of international communications and pluck out messages tied to the supreme leader. The NSA has also been active in Latin America. The Times reveals the NSA aided the Colombian army by monitoring movements of the FARC rebel group using eavesdropping gear aboard a Defense Department plane flying 60,000 feet over Colombia. Venezuela was listed as one of 6 enduring targets by the NSA, along with China, North Korea, Iraq, Iran, and Russia. Internal NSA documents describe the agency's goal as, quote, "preventing Venezuela from achieving its regional leadership objectives and pursuing policies that negatively impact U.S. global interests," unquote. The Times also reveals the existence of an NSA database called Dishfire that, quote, "stores years of text messages from around the world just in case," unquote. Another NSA program called Tracfin, quote, "accumulates gigabytes of credit card purchases," unquote. These are just some of the revelations in Sunday's New York Times piece based on the leaks of Edward Snowden. Joining us now is the author of the piece, New York Times national security reporter Scott Shane, joining us by Democracy Now! Video stream from Maryland. Welcome to Democracy Now!, Scott. First of all, talk about how you got all of this information, all of these leaks of Edward Snowden.
Well, what happened was Edward Snowden did not give the New York Times any of his documents, in part because he was upset that the Times had held a story about NSA's warrantless wiretapping for a year back in 2004, eventually published it the next year in 2005. But he did give, as people know, a lot of documents to Laura Poitras, to Glenn Greenwald, and to others. And The Guardian was given a large collection of about 50,000 documents that were labeled as GCHQ, that's Government Communications Headquarters, which is the British equivalent of NSA. And GCHQ works so closely with NSA that probably about a third of those documents are NSA documents. The Guardian shared those 50,000 documents with us at the New York Times, and some of us at the Times have spent the last couple of months going through them.
And talk about what most shocked you by the documents you've gotten that are from the National Security Agency. We've gone through just some of the points. You begin your piece with Ban Ki-moon last April. Why don't you start there?
Well, I used to be with the Baltimore Sun, and I wrote a series on NSA back in 1995, so I can't say that I was shocked by any of this. But I think perhaps one of the most interesting questions these documents raise is, I referred to the agency as an omnivore. They're under pressure from policymakers, from White House, from CIA, from DOD, from the State Department, to sort of be prepared to supply information on almost anything. A crisis breaks out tomorrow in a unexpected place, and NSA is under heavy pressure to produce intelligence from that place. And that combined with a big budget and secrecy has, I think, created a kind of, what actually Secretary of State John Kerry called last week, automatic pilot, just a sort of automatic effort to snatch up any kind of electronic communication there is around the world. And I thought the Ban Ki-moon example was an interesting one. Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the UN, very friendly to the United States, obviously a very public man, doesn't hide what he thinks. He was coming in April to the White House for a routine meeting with President Obama, and NSA collected his talking points before the meeting. Now, the White House won't say whether President Obama was given and read those talking points in advance of the meeting, but if you think about it, it's kind of hard to imagine that those talking points would contain anything terribly shocking. And of course, there is the political cost of being caught essentially eavesdropping on the Secretary General of the UN. That cost has now been paid. So I think, as long as they could remain secret about all this stuff, NSA's instinct was collect everything. If the White House or whoever else in the government wants to read it, fine. If not, fine. But now I think the administration has a very difficult decision to make about balancing the political cost of spying, particularly on allies, on friendly countries, friendly people, against what they might glean from that.
We're going to break and then come back to this discussion. We're talking to Scott Shane, national security reporter for the New York Times. His front page article, "No Morsel Too Minuscule for All-Consuming NSA." This is Democracy Now!, back in a minute.